Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
6:37 on the Morning Majority. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, all here this morning. Robert Kagan joins us now. He's a historian, senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, also is a foreign policy advisor to Mitt Romney. He's got a new book out called The World America Made, on American exceptionalism and the perils of decline in a post-American world. Robert, good to have you on. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Well, let's start off with Syria. A lot of stuff has been going on with Syria in the last couple of months. We had a headline this morning that the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, says that we need Bashar Assad's consent to put troops into Syria. I know CNN is reporting that the Syrian government, are using detained civilians as human shields. Can you assess the situation in Syria right now, what role America should be playing?
Well, it seems to me the U.S. should be doing at least what it did in Libya. Syria is a really important strategic interest for the region. It's a key ally of Iran. It's the link to Hezbollah in Lebanon, not to mention the humanitarian catastrophe that's unfolding as Assad kills his people. It seems to me we ought to be supporting the Syrian opposition. We ought to be talking to the Turks and others about providing safe zones for the opposition. And look, the president has said very clearly that Assad must go, and so I think we need to take the necessary measures to ensure that happens. How
well organized is the resistance in Syria compared to what was going on in Libya at the time?
Well, as I recall, Libya at the time, it didn't look too very well organized either. One of the problems that any opposition has, it has to have a place where it can sort of organize. It can't be under constant attack by the government, and right now the opposition operates, a little bit in Turkey and in other neighboring countries, but they really need a place to pull themselves together, and I think that there's no question it's going to be a challenge to unify the opposition.
So to do that, you would have to go in and take out air defenses in Syria and set up a safe zone and set up air patrols over the country of Syria, which I'm guessing would be a bit more difficult than it might have been in Libya.
Well, it would. I think, by the way, some of the safe zones can be set up in, along the borders of neighboring countries, and then you just have to provide protection for them. But there's no question it's a more difficult military operation. The Syrian military is much stronger. But on the other hand, I do believe that if the United States and NATO and Turkey and others joined in, it'll be interesting to see how hard the Syrian military fights. They've been pasted in the past by neighboring militaries, including the Israelis.
But do we know if the resistance is any better than the current regime? I mean, it's the whole situation with Libya all over again. Do we really know who the rebels are? Did we know who they were? And are they going to be better than Gaddafi?
Well, I think that, in the case of Gaddafi and in the case of Assad, it's a little like asking, who comes next after Hitler. I don't know how much worse somebody can be than these guys. Obviously, we have to be careful about who the opposition is going to be and what they will do afterwards. And I think it's important for the U.S. government and other governments to be working with them now, both to unify them and to make sure that they have the right goals.
You're in an interesting position because you are a Romney advisor, but reportedly President Obama, big fan of the thesis of your book, The World America Made. What do you make of that, and has he talked to you at all about it?
No, he hasn't talked to me about it. I mean, he seems to have based at least part of his State of the Union address on it. Look, no president wants to run on the idea that he's leading America to decline, and I guess I'm glad that his rhetorical approach is that he's opposed to American decline. But you have to look at some of the policies that he's conducting and ask whether that's really the direction he's on, especially the defense budget cuts, which his new budget does nothing to forestall.
Oh, and I'm sort of occasionally in the, oh no, we're doomed camp, so I appreciate your thesis and want to use it to buoy me.
But I'd like to help if I can.
Right. But on the domestic front, when we are talking about how we can't pay for so many things and how we feel unwilling to actually tackle that problem, any good news for me there about why we're not destined for
The
this?
only good news I have, and I talk about this in the book, is that in the past we've faced similar crises. We've faced similar log jams. We've looked gridlocked. I mean, the framers created a system that is supposed to be clunky and move slowly, and yet the country does have this capacity, usually at times of what they call critical elections, of breaking through the log jam and making some progress. I mean, we have overcome big crises in the past, and I'm just hopeful that, we have a very resilient and flexible country.
I'd like to talk about Iran for a moment. Hardly a day goes by where I don't wake up and think, I wonder if this is the day that the Israelis take action. Where are you on the situation in Iran, and do you think the Israelis are getting closer and closer to taking some action against the nuclear facilities inside Iran?
You know, I have to admit I've stopped playing that game. The Israelis have been threatening on and off for a couple of years now. I think at some point they may decide that things have gone too far. I think we have to remember that Israeli military capacity is somewhat limited. It's a very vast program. A lot of it is buried. Israel lacks the extraordinary power that the United States would bring to such an operation. So I'm hopeful that Israel doesn't have to do it alone if they make that decision.
And do you have the sense that the United States is prepared to assist Israel or to act unilaterally in that matter?
I think it's hard to say. I know that I'm sure that the military has made plans. I know there are forces in the region, but the decision to do it in an election year cuts in a lot of directions for this president. And so it's very hard to predict. I think, of course, they're hoping that the Iranians will buckle under the pressure of the economic sanctions.
And from a technical standpoint, if the United States did decide to do something, do we have the technical capability? Do we have the tools to take out that facility, or are we in the same position of others around the world?
Well, we're in better position than anybody else. I think we could do significant damage to it, set back the program by a number of years. The problem, of course, is that, unless we were able to get on the ground, which I think we won't know exactly what we've done. But I think we could do significant damage. The question is also what comes afterwards and what kind of retaliation Iran undertakes, including terrorist attacks around the world and possibly in the United States. So we have to be prepared for the fallout.
You talk about a post-American world in your book. If it's a post-American world, whose world is it then?
Well, I believe we have to avoid moving into a post-American world.
But if we don't,
right.
then who is it? Is it China?
Well, partly, obviously, it's a rising China. It becomes a world with numerous great powers, all of roughly equal strength. And as history tells us, that's actually a recipe for instability and war. I think one thing we've seen is that the overwhelming predominance of the United States has been a tremendous force for peace around the world.
Bob, great to have you on. Thanks very much, and good luck with the book.
Thank you very much.